All right, so this is Strong Personalities. I'm your host, Yanni Bear. Today, I have the honor of interviewing Lynn Morehouse. He is the promoter of the official Strongman Games, and you also have trained. Oh man, I'm so sorry. What's your gym called?
Well, it's not even a gym. It's Train Strongman. It's my company that I started back in 2013 when I started promoting contests.
And you've had a busy season this year because I know you've been like nonstop with all the regional events. Did you finally get some time to just relax before, November?
We're 1 week into relaxing now. Yes.
Did you get much sleep, or were you still just thinking and working about November?
Oh, now I just panic every time someone says, 10 weeks until the contest. And then I just count backwards on all the things that need to be done. So yeah, we went from a busy summer into a busy fall.
All right. But you seem to be the type that likes to be busy.
I definitely enjoy having things to do if I'm interested in doing them. I absolutely hate a to-do list of things I don't want to do. But in this instance, it's not too bad. It is pretty easy to get spread a little bit too thin and get overwhelmed, though.
All right, so let's get into it. So when it comes to all these events, I know in one of your posts, you actually mentioned that you had to bump up the weights on some of these events due to the numbers you started seeing in the qualifier. Which event had was most impacted weight-wise by the numbers you saw during the qualifier?
It absolutely had to be the sandbag to shoulder. Between the online qualifier having, a dozen athletes going over 400, and then also seeing, the CrossFit Games having a similar. It's a different event. They were doing essentially a 1 rep max where they had rest in between and things like that. Where we're expecting these athletes to be fairly rapid fire for our event, but either way. I couldn't let CrossFit do a heavier sandbag than Strongman, so I just had to resolve that.
What was it? Just strictly on the CrossFit numbers, or what percentage do you think you increased all the weights by?
So for the sandbag to shoulder, I originally was going to stop at 325 pounds because that's a reasonably heavy sandbag. Especially the 5th sandbag that you've shouldered in a minute. But seeing that CrossFit went up to 350, I knew that would be the minimum. But then also seeing how many athletes went above 350 for the online qualifier, I've decided to make 375 pounds the 5th sandbag for the open heavyweight men. And that kind of cascades down so that even I can probably go and pull it up, but even the lightweight ladies for the sandbag to shoulder, they're going to go all the way from 125 up to 225.
Yep.
And, we'll see women doing the 275-pound sandbag, which will be heavier than CrossFit. So
I'm excited for that sandbag because I was fortunate enough to be there for the Southwest Regionals. And just the speed that some of these athletes can move through these sandbags, I'm excited. So when it comes to the events you picked, did you just decide to pull some events from each regionals event, or did you have some different kind of plan? Well, like what kind of thought process goes into putting these events together?
Well, official Strongman Games event selection kind of came first in my mind. It wasn't finalized, but I did want to test a couple of things out with the regionals. So, year over year, I need to make sure that I keep it interesting. For example, the deadlift ladder had been done a couple of years now. And even though we had made modifications, adding, the 5th mammoth bar onto the deadlift ladder. And I think, honestly, it's a great test of strength. I think it's a fun event to watch. And it's really efficient during the competition as a promoter, outside of, loading up 200 individual 45-pound plates to bring to the contest. It's efficient. So I knew right out of the gate that I was going to be doing a different deadlift this year. A lot of people ask, oh, can we do a car deadlift or this kind of deadlift? or maybe just a max deadlift. And some of the logistics become an issue. You know, I think about the events. I've got events for the semifinals where it's all of the athletes, so 300 plus athletes. And then I've got the finals events where, you know, it's only top 10 per division. So you're a little bit, you have a little more wiggle room with what you can do, where you don't have to worry about, you know, the speed of the event as much. So car deadlift, just the concept of having 4 identical cars, would it be an issue? I actually have 4 identical car deadlifts. It's the problem of 4 identical cars. And then saying, how can I have a car that works for lightweight ladies that doesn't need to be a different car for the heavyweight men, not to have one or the other have something that doesn't look right? So that just becomes, I think, a little bit too difficult to make happen. And so, you know, you're looking at other events. And I realized I love the visual of the Hummer tire deadlift with an axle and, you know, the 13-foot bar and all that. But I personally don't love the 18-inch pull height. I think it favors some athletes, you know, from a height standpoint, a little bit too much. It's not as an equal level playing field, in my opinion. One example of this is, you know, some of those 18-inch deadlift world records, you'll see a higher weight from a lower weight class. And that has more to do with height than actual strength, in my opinion. So I decided, you know what, we're going to get the best of both worlds. We're going to go ahead and do the axle with the tires, but we're going to stand on a platform to equalize it to a conventional axle deadlift height, so that everyone in the world can just train with a normal bar, a normal axle bar and bumper plates, because that's the correct training height. But the visual appeal to the audience is going to be that of tires. And I believe with 4 lanes going, that I have enough tires that we'll be able to have, I think, up to 3 tires per side for the heavyweight men, and maybe even the masters men, as the weights are. So it'll be pretty cool looking.
Yeah. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's definitely one example of where, you know, my process for choosing an event goes through a few different stages.
Yeah, I saw that, because you were thinking about the athlete, you were thinking about how you execute this, especially when you have a 360 people signed up for the competition, right?
It's a little bit crazy. Yeah, I would expect, as we get a little bit closer to the event, you know, people train really hard for a world level competition. And so injuries happen. Sometimes unexpected travel and financial things happen. There normally is about a 10% drop off just the month before the event.
Oh, wow.
But this year, I would be really surprised if we don't have 350 athletes on contest day, which is more than we've ever had in the past, which really kind of shows the growth and the interest of the official Strongman Games.
So we were talking about the axle deadlift. So I got a quick question from one of the athletes, and they want to know why the difference between wearing a deadlift suit during the qualifier and then not wearing a deadlift suit for the comp.
I would say that I don't care that much about the deadlift suit on the qualifier, because I don't have to wait on you. You're not having to wear a competition shirt over it, things like that. So my reason for not having a deadlift suit this year is 100% because of just seeing the process with the deadlift suit. When people are really strapped in tight for a deadlift suit, you know, it's not pleasant. So what I have is, instead of having 4 athletes that are ready to go, I have 4 athletes that have their straps down and their shirt off, and they are waiting until they are told, now go, to get their straps on and put a shirt on to then do the event. And it costs me at least 30 seconds every single heat just because of a deadlift suit. And I've watched some of the videos. I think a deadlift suit sometimes makes the deadlift look like it's worse form from the side, like people are a little more stiff leg kind of thing. And so I think about some of the spectators and whatnot. I'm like, it doesn't look as good. And so that's the main reason for that. I am allowing briefs with the caveat of I really don't, like a deadlift suit with the sleeve or the straps off isn't acceptable. I really want something that doesn't look ridiculous. You should be able to stand with your shirt ready to go, waiting without having to worry about anything else. I've seen some of these briefs that go all the way up to your chest, and I'm like, that's not really the spirit of what I'm allowing. What I'm allowing is I'm not going to check your underwear. You have the compression, everything, and that's not an issue. But if you can't be ready to go with your competition shirt on over, and if heaven forbid you do a great job and I want to interview you and you can't speak until you rip off your competition shirt, that's what I'm trying to avoid. Gotcha. And since the online qualifier, I didn't have to worry about any of those things. I said, yeah, let's go for it. I want to see some big numbers. That was honestly the only difference. No evil plot in there or big thinking.
No, yeah. So time efficiency, definitely. And then like the standards of the movements makes complete sense. So let's start breaking these down. We've broken down the axle deadlift, which is going to be the first event for day 2. A lot of questions about day 1's events, Viking press. Are you going to show them the new setup, or is what's pictured on the site what they're actually going to be using?
I would say no to both. So the reality is the new setup's not finished being built yet. Okay. What is pictured is certainly the prototype, I should say. We used that in 2019. I think it was fine. Couple of things I wanted to personally modify is the ability to adjust heights without having to remove the weights. That was a big time loss during the competition, and it was challenging for my volunteers and staff. And so I'm resolving that issue. Another thing, I am trying to make the arm longer. I simply don't want as tight of an angle so that the facing away actually affects people less. Where when you are with a shorter arm, the angle, you end up going back further, where with a longer arm, that angle is much less. So, there's some improvements that I'm making, but I see no reason to change the way the handles are created. So yeah, I like the facing forward handles, 24-inch separation, just like a log. And then yes, you're facing the spectators rather than them having, looking at your butt the entire time.
Have you seen some of the setups that some of the athletes are creating to like try to replicate as close as possible the Viking press? Pretty impressive engineering.
I think it's great. I really do. I'm hoping that, the implement that we come up with, looks as good as some of the ones I've seen out there. But, the Viking press is a cool movement. So one of the reasons why I chose that as well is I really wanted to do circus dumbbell. And I try to keep a very balanced contest. And circus dumbbell on its own, I don't think can be the only overhead press in a world championship, because I believe it is an extremely technical lift. Not necessarily the strongest person wins on that. There's some mobility issues, especially as you get into the masters 40 and 50 plus. So by doing Viking press, I was able to take the least technical overhead press movement because there is no double dip. So none of the split jerks, push jerks really come into play. So that's an extremely, strict strength kind of movement. Yes, you can push press, but if people haven't done it, it is harder because you cannot jerk and do that double dip. So by combining what I think is a very technical overhead in the finals and then a very, just strict strength-based overhead in the semifinals, I feel like I'm okay having two overhead events.
Yeah, and I like your breakdown on why like that works. One's more strength-based, one's more technique-based, and there is usually a big disparity on which athletes succeed in each one. So the next one we have is farmer's walk. That's a personal favorite of mine. So we got 4 lanes going. What are you excited about when it comes to the farmer's walk, when it comes to event? Is it just like a kinetic event, so like it's got things more moving instead of just one stationary spot?
I definitely love moving events. I think it adds some interest. I think it adds functionality to the strength that the strongman develops. Farmer's Walk is a really cool one because it also is a grip test. And I think every good strongman event should have some test of grip. So this event, though, in 2019, I did a Farmer's Walk event where it was just 50 feet down and you had to turn and go 50 feet back. What I found was, one, a lot of people had trouble with the turn, but some people just dominated the event and were done quickly. Others, it was a real struggle. And so for this year, I wanted to add an additional challenge, which is 2 different weights. So we're giving the lighter weight, and I say lighter, it's still heavy, and they have to go down and back, but I'm removing the turn. I think that'll allow more people to feel comfortable with the event and to focus this event less on the technique of turning with farmers and more on your grip strength. So you're going to go down 50 feet and then you're going to drop, turn around physically, and then go back 50 feet with one light set of farmers. And then you'll immediately move on to a heavier set of farmers for just a straight shot. I believe that this is going to be one of those where we're going to get the crowd very excited when someone moves on to that last set of farmers and can make it all the way there. I do still allow drops. I think in some ways it would be a mercy to say no drops allowed so that you were just done. But these athletes will finish up their 60 seconds and absolutely grind through the farmers, and their hands are going to be destroyed. But luckily, it's the last event of the day.
Yeah, please, strongman, take care of your calluses. That's one of the things that drives me crazy in the strongman world. They don't take care of the calluses. Shave them down so that way they're not completely tearing up your hands if unfortunately that happens to you. But yeah, I like the progression. I think visually, as somebody who's going to be watching, just being able to see like the front and back. I do like the whole taking away the turn and forcing the athlete to actually drop the weight, turn around. It's going to reduce the chances of injury as well, because sometimes that is an awkward turn when you're trying to turn with the farmer's carry. But yeah, I'm super excited. The unlimited drop. So what kind of surface are you going to be running this on? Just because I know that's a lot of weight, that's a lot of metal hitting the ground. Is it going to be like matted, or are we just going with whatever the floor is at the site?
Well, Yanni, I think of everything. So in 2019, I actually got yelled at by the venue because the warm-up area had scratched the floor quite a bit. I won't say damage, they just had to buff it out. But yeah, metal hitting the ground with 300 pounds loaded into it, and usually with a forward force applied, does some damage. So this year we're going to have rubber feet on the farmers, so it won't be an issue.
That's awesome. Yep, you do think of everything. Let's see. So we did talk about the axle deadlift. We talked about how we're not going to do suits because it's a time saver, especially when, like you said, 30 seconds per athlete that it was costing you at previous events times 350 potentially athletes adds up really quick. Next, we go into the sandbag to shoulder. It's a series of 5 Cerberus strength sandbags, increasing your weight in the fastest time possible with 75-second time limits. How do you have like a percentage that you have in mind when it comes to the number of athletes that will finish the events, partially finish, and then zeros? Because I know sometimes we're scared, like me as an athlete, I'm scared of those zeros. So like what percentage do you kind of keep in mind when you're setting these times and weights?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the sandbag to shoulder ladder is probably the easier one because the reality is I don't think anyone should zero with a 5 implement ladder. But I absolutely have a percentage of athletes in mind that I think will be able to finish all 5 within the time cap. And, people use round numbers where they talk about 1/3 finish, 1/3 get somewhere in the middle, 1/3 zero. It's not that quite that simple. And with a ladder, especially, I'm looking at, where they make it in the group of five. I think there are going to be some athletes that breeze through all five of these because they're just that good. That being said, I normally do 60 seconds. I went to 75 because I think about the spectacle of the event. Once again, you watch something like the different regional events that we've seen, plus watching CrossFit Games, the energy is in the struggle for the last bag.
Yes.
I want to be able to give enough time where they continue to struggle. You don't want it where if you don't get it your very first try, you're just done. You want just enough time that you attempt that second effort after you've made a mistake, perhaps. So in this instance, I really think there's going to be about, I haven't been thinking percentages. I think about if I have 30 athletes, I want 5 of them to really blow this out of the water. I want another 10 to 15 to do a good job. And then there's 10 that are really questioning the level they thought they were bringing and wondering, oh my God, was I really prepared for Worlds?
Yeah.
And that is regardless of division. I always want, that the bottom 10 of 30 to say, this is definitely a more challenging landscape of athletes than I've ever encountered in the past. This is crazy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so for a ladder, that's a little bit easier because there's not zeros. Zeros have a huge cost. It's almost impossible to come back from a zero and win. I think a good example of that is somehow Mark Felix can still zero overhead in World's Strongest Man and make it to finals. It's just, it's nuts. That's a good example where you're just so good at everything else. But in general, a zero is kind of, it's game over for your podium options. So when I think about like the axle deadlift weights, it was a lot more challenging. I'll use, for example, like I'll do 2 different examples. I've got 64 kilogram Rhiannon Lovelace, multiple world record holder in deadlift. And then in Masters men, I've got Rauno Heinla, who just did 1,050-pound deadlift. So basically, in the top 5 in the world, and he's in Masters there. I cannot design this deadlift for them as much as they would like to message and tell me so. So they're going to get some reps. That's just the fact there. But on the other end, I have Masters athletes that the weight I've chosen might very well be their 1 rep max. And then on the 64 kilogram ladies might very well be their 1 rep max. And so I'm going to have zeros on that, but I would much rather have zeros on that, like 5 to 10 athletes out of 30, not 20 athletes out of 30.
Yeah, and which you would have with the other weights that for the top 5 athletes that you were talking about. Yeah.
Correct. Sometimes you'll see events that go out there and they're like, it's meant to be heavy, and only 5 athletes or only a handful of athletes get a single rep. I don't want a reps event to end with 3 or 4 or 5 reps. That tells me it was a little bit too heavy. For example, if Rauno doesn't get double digits with his exceptional deadlift, I'd be surprised. If Rhiannon doesn't get double digits, I'd be surprised. But the vast majority of the people in the middle will be struggling to get a handful of reps. And that's kind of where I designed something like that. So yes, zeros are to be expected, but they're not to be expected from the majority of athletes. They're only to be expected from athletes that either have a severe weakness that they should be addressing in the off season, or that this is their first Worlds and it's a bit of a shock to their system about the level of competition they're about to deal with.
Yeah, because these events eat up your energy pretty quickly without even realizing it. All right, so the next one is day 3. We have the car walk. I love watching this one. Are we using the same cars as pictured online, or are we changing up the cars?
So one thing to note, so the day 3, we will be doing the top 10 from each division. So this is going to be, instead of 4 lanes, we're going down to 2. Because of that, we will be able to use, so at World's Strongest Man this year, 2 of my cars from the official Strongman Games last year went and got prettied up, and they got painted really cool pink and glossy, or not pink, God, red. I was thinking pretty and pink for some reason, but they're very shiny, glossy red. They look great, and we will be using those 2 red cars. They're the same cars people had used in the past, but the critical thing here is it's a yoke. This was designed on purpose. We don't want to give favoritism to people that can train exactly on the equipment year round. It is a yoke. You will find that, Chloe Brennan, who got the world record in the 64 kilogram women, she had never touched that implement before she got here. She had just trained yoke and was good at yoke. And so that's a nice thing where it is a visually very attractive event, and it's designed so that we can really test the limits of how heavy we can go. So, for example, the men's open will be doing 1,000 pounds, and that is heavier than what they did at World's Strongest Man this year. So it's going to be a really good event, head-to-head, a great foot race. I'm really excited about this one. And I can say to the athletes, we continue to make it a little bit better. We went and bought all brand new tires so that all the tires have the exact, amount of wear and everything else. And it's all painted nice red. So it's going to be a good looking event.
I wish somebody would do like a dry run, but dressed up as Fred Flintstone. Because every time I see somebody doing a yoke, I just imagine somebody dressed up as Fred just doing the yabba dabba do fast feet.
I think that's something that you could pull off. Come on.
Hey, I was Fred Flintstone one time for Halloween. So yes. All right. So then we have the circus dumbbell. This has become one of my favorite events just because of how technical it is. What are you excited about this event? And what kind of circus dumbbell is it going to be? Is it like the one that we see pictured where it looks like that traditional circus strongman one, or are we changing it up again this year?
So it will be a globe style. It will not be the cylinder style that has plates loaded in.
Okay.
And that's for a couple of reasons. One, it will be a shot loaded. So I'm using steel shot. The benefit of that is it really dramatically decreases bounces and rollaways. So safety is a concern. The speed, since it's a ladder, I want you to be able to kind of, drop it and move on, not have to drop it and fiddle with it to put it back into place. But we are actually still investigating 2 different styles of shot loadable globe style dumbbells. So, to be determined, but the reality is expect a globe style shot loaded dumbbell and you'll be just fine. But it will not be the cylinder style. And if people have trained specifically for cylinder, I can go and tell. Like if you go the high elbow and you've got this thing, way up here, guess what? With a globe style, it's coming in a little bit more. You just need to be prepared for that. So I try to be upfront with that. But if there's an opportunity for a company to release a new circus dumbbell to the market that is quality, I want to be there for them. And so we are investigating one option. Otherwise, we're going to go to an old faithful that I am really proud of, that I continue to use. But that's going to be a good event. So as I mentioned, by using steel shot loaded, these will be kind of a dead stop scenario. I'm going to also have it where you have some very blanket rules, where if it rolls off the platform that you have, then you got to go back and get it because you just lost that rep. That's called not controlling. But everything else is controlled as long as it stays. And so that's going to allow people to move pretty quickly. I'm pretty excited about that.
I love that because there's none of that, like, just get it out of the way, because if it falls off the platform, it automatically means you didn't get it and you have to come back. I always laugh when I see for overhead movements where I see it in most competitions where it just says not allowed to touch or rest on the athlete's head.
Yep.
I'm amazed that any athlete would even think about putting that much weight on their head than to try to like lift the weight. But have you ever actually seen that at a competition where somebody actually tries to rest the weight, like axle, log, or whatever?
Oh, definitely with the log. I have seen that more than a dozen times. So that's a legitimate needed rule. No one would have ever told me that I would see circus dumbbell where the press comes into like 3 positions where, you know, they're getting it up, then they get to here, then they go vertical, then they, you know, so there is a chance that someone might be trying to do stuff. So I'd rather just be safe and say, please do not involve your head in this movement. That would be great. It's another example though, where circus dumbbell is not a well-tested event internationally. I've spoken with a lot of athletes and promoters outside of the United States, and you get examples where a world record, not a world record, but a national record in this other country is technically what I will have on like my 3rd or 4th dumbbell in this series. So because there's such a disparity where in one country, maybe 55 kilograms is the world record or the national record for their entire country. And that's 120 pounds. And I'm asking the lightweight ladies and the masters ladies to do that on their 4th dumbbell in a series. It seems almost unreasonable, but you switch to another country that has more circus dumbbells in competition, and all of a sudden it jumps up 30 pounds. Or you just look at you know, some of the records. So choosing the weights was really challenging on this one. It's another example where I really don't think I will see any zeros. I will see that 5 to 10 athletes that are going to struggle to get 1 or 2. And then I'm going to see that 15 athletes that are going to get 3 and maybe get 4 with a lot of effort. And then a few that it's a smoke show because, you know, they have the technique down and circus dumbbell is something they incorporate into their training frequently. I think it's going to be really awesome to see how the athletes do it. There's so many different techniques involved with this. And once again, with that progression of a ladder, the crowd's going to get excited for who's ever up front and is on to that final dumbbell.
And then you just look like a superhero when you're punching that up in the air. So it's a great visual. And then of course we go for the classic, the Atlas stones to end the competition. Anything that you're trying to do differently when it comes to this event that maybe hasn't been seen before? Or are we just sticking to the bread and butter, let the strongest win the competition?
So it's going to be the same as it was last year for the Atlas stone. There was a good spread. Atlas stones is a funny thing where a terrific athlete can just have a tacky mishap and their day is ruined, which is a bummer. But for the most part, I think that the weights that I've chosen, the heights that I've chosen, you know, we've got it starting at 60 inches for the men, going down to 54 for the last. You know, a lot of people who are hitting up these large Atlas stone PRs, I'll go and look, and I was like, either they're 6'7" or that's a 42-inch platform. And the reality is, even if you're training at a 48, which might seem a standard, or 52, guess what? That's still lower than the lowest platform the men are going to have to do at OSG. So you get used to doing some high platforms or you will suffer. For the women, it starts at 54 and then goes down from there in 2-inch increments. You know, it's nice to be able to go and have different stone height platforms. And that was something that I custom designed these platforms to be height adjustable because I saw that as a problem out there where either the women had ridiculously light stones because they had to press forever high, or the men had such low platforms that some of the taller athletes didn't even need to finish their triple extensions. So I'm really happy with that. Going up to 425 pounds is still a good heavy weight. And when you factor in it's a 6th stone, not a 5th one, it becomes even more appropriate that, you know, it isn't 450 or 440 because it's not the 5th stone, it's the 6th one. It's the end of a 7 events over 3 days. They are not going to be looking to PR their stones here. They're looking to survive and finish.
Survive is the correct word for sure. So we're running up on here in the last 3.5 minutes. So I have one last quick question for you. It's with the what are the long-term plans that you have for OSG?
To continue to grow in multiple areas. I don't think grow in the number of athletes. I think that number is a totally fine number today. I wouldn't, if you could say you could have 200 more athletes, I'd say no, thank you.
Okay, good.
But I do think that the 50 plus women will happen in the future. I want to keep the equality between men and women continuing. And the only reason 50 plus hasn't been there as we tested for 50 plus men was that I just didn't think there were enough women. Luckily, people are coming out of the woodwork, and as with everything, you ask and the community delivers. So I believe that will happen. I think that there's a chance for an additional 120 men's class, 120 kilogram, and then a 91 women's to kind of balance that out, because definitely going from 231 to competing against 350 plus pound people is a challenge. So divisions can still modify. There could be an adaptive. There could be a teen or junior in the future, certainly. I also see that the location and becoming an international event as far as where we set up the venue is definitely a possibility in the future. That needs to just wait until there's confidence that attendance will be just as high caliber in another country as it is in the United States. And I actually think that we're reaching that level. And then of course, production quality. I want this to be the highest level production of any strongman competition in the world, to the point where you could go and take clips from this and create your own World's Strongest Man under 105 kilogram TV show, or your own World's Strongest Woman TV show from the clips that we have at the official Strongman Games.
That's a lot of different avenues to improve that. So I'm excited to see that, especially that 120 kilo, just because I'm like a tweener between that 105 and then the open. So I always struggle to like find the right weight for me to compete in. Because I usually get outweighed by like 50 pounds by the super heavyweights. Lynn, thank you so much. Where can people reach you? Unless they're already reaching you in the thousands of DMs and emails.
People definitely know how to reach me, but the easiest way is the @official Strongman Games on Instagram, or the website strongman.games. So www.strongman.games. And if you do know, on Instagram, I am @Linsalot, kind of like Lancelot with a Lynn. So I'm available there and always open for people asking questions. I try to be really, really open to suggestions.
Awesome. Again, Lynn, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man, so I'm going to let you go, and hopefully you get a little bit more, a couple of naps squeezed in there before November. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, Jan.